The Path to Darkness. The morning air flows cold and crisp with each breath Stefen takes, the light of the sun warm against his face. It has not been long since he has left Pagamin Castrum, the home of the winter goddess now fading behind him with each step he takes, as the path lies sprawled out ahead. Terrible beasts and dark creatures live deep within the mountains. The warning of the goddess rings through Stefen's head, some of which feast on flesh or need fresh bone and blood for their powerful sorcery. Although Stefen knows he must listen to the goddess, the path seems far more beautiful and tranquil than her warning had made it sound. Flowers of all forms and colors grow far as the eye can see, some small like cornflowers and poppies with vibrant gold and violet and orange petals, while others are tall as sunflowers or grow like roses and vibrant bushes of thorns. Worrying he's going in the wrong direction, Stefen pulls out the beautiful map Kimonos had given to him before spinning around to reorient himself. Now facing north, Stefen begins to examine the map, running his fingers over a glowing path. When the goddess had given it to him, the map looked as though it depicted the mountain range in which she dwelt. As soon as Stefen had left the castle, however, the map began to hum softly, and he felt some sort of energy radiating from the parchment. The humming had stopped just before a glowing golden path had appeared on the map. This path shows the way to the temple of Mr. Heractus, or the temple dedicated to the god of the unseen workings. The wind blows wildly, rustling the many-colored leaves of the trees around Stefen. The more his eyes drink in the nature surrounding him, the world suddenly seems odd and out of place. Some trees have orange and golden leaves as they would in the harvest season, as others blossom green with the vitality of springtime, all the while dark clouds loom in the distance. This is strange, for after all, when he had met the goddess, it was clear she had brought with her the winds of the winter season. If this were true, and it is indeed the time of frost and snow, Stefen thinks, then why do spring flowers blossom all around with golden leaves above? Looking at the clouds in the distance, Stefen notices flurries of snow pouring out of them while the sun blazes above overhead. Summer sun, winter winds, spring flowers, and autumn leaves all existing together. What a mysterious land I find myself in, he thinks. Stefen's journey up the mountain is blissful at the start, the wind rustling through the trees as the sun shines brightly overhead. Along the path he sees many wild creatures, but not the monstrous beasts which the goddess had warned him of, rather smaller animals. Squirrels scuttle up trees, their coats shimmering, sterling silver in the sunlight, while golden kingfishers, violet-breasted rollers, and even blue jays more vibrant than the daytime sky fly high overhead. The tranquil melodies of the birds seem to be having some strange effect on his mind, for as they chirp, call, and sing their sweet songs, Stefen begins to want nothing more than to go and catch a closer look at the magnificent birds. He sees a bright glint of violet not too far off the path, the many songs of the birds still shooting through the air. Their singing now beginning to hypnotize Stefen causes him to step forward for a closer look. Although out of his mind, when Stefen is only a hair width from crossing the edge of the path, he feels a familiar sharp chill in the wind. Out of nowhere and quite suddenly, the sharp sensation of a snow-flaked wind seems to sting his skin yet refortify his mind, helping him to overcome the enchantment of the song. Being able to think clearly once more, Stefen remembers the warning of the goddess in which he was told not to stray from the path. Keep to the path, he attempts to tell himself, yet even as he thinks this, the song of the birds begins again. Now singing together rather than individually, the song is too great for Stefen alone to overcome. Instinct strikes him like lightning before he removes the beautiful flute from his pocket, taking a great breath before pressing his lips to the mouthpiece. He began to play the wooden flute. The notes that flow from the instrument ring richly through the air, and as Stefen continues to play more music, his song overcomes that of the birds, and soon a still silence fills the air. The trickery of the beautiful birds frightened Stefen, for his eyes had been sharp for beasts and monsters. Yet its threat had been so carefully cloaked in beauty that he overlooked the danger of the birds, and sorcerous illusions such as these are something he has never faced before. Even still, after walking through the beautiful land and again drinking in their sights, Stefen finds the path through the mountains to be just as beautiful, though far less alluring than they were before. However, after overcoming the birds, what he views as his first real obstacle, Stefen continues his journey with much more caution and confidence than he had started with. He spends a long while trekking through this land of many seasons, along the path, seeing many enchanting birds and marvelous flowers, but never does he dare to inch closer for a better look. Far off on a mountain cliff in the distance, Stefen notices the shape of some cruel castle. The dark color of the stone and its twisted shape causes him to feel it must be the home of some wicked sorceress. Even the land around it is covered in a thick fog, obscuring the ground from sight. This leaves only the dark and twisted towers looming forebodingly like wicked pillars of shadow over the fog-cloaked land. Just as Stefen is beginning to fear his journey will take him near this wicked place, the path veers to the left and in the opposite direction of the castle. Where once bright beams of summer sunlight had shone through the autumn and spring leaves, now very little can penetrate through the thick canopy of leafy green above. On either side of Stefen grows colossal mountain ash trees, so large they could be hollowed out and made into great watchtowers. These trees are the largest he has ever seen, their bases even greater in size than the small house he once lived in. Towering as tall as his eyes can see, the leaves of the great tree intertwine 300 feet overhead, blocking most of the sunlight from reaching the forest floor. It takes very little time for Stefen's eyes to adjust to the sudden loss of light, and as they do, he begins to take in the rest of his surroundings. Other than the sheer size of the trees and plants around him, the forest looks to be a normal one. Vines so thick a grown man wouldn't be able to wrap his arms around them grow up the colossal trees like great snakes. As he continues along the path, Stefen notices something strange. No animals are in his sight, no birds flying above, nor squirrels in the trees, so he pauses to listen. Soft drops of dew fall gently from the trees above with a gentle splash. Their massive leaves rustle gently as the wind drifts through them, but still he hears no animals. Stefen continues walking, but the silence gives him an eerie feeling. This ignites his imagination, and soon his mind races with notions of what has power enough to silence an entire forest. What in nature could be so fierce that all of the creatures have left this forest? Stefen wonders. What beasts or monsters are lurking in these shadows, just waiting for me to leave this path? But he hears no beasts nor monsters. In fact, for a great while he hears nothing but his own breath, and simply walks on in silence. The further he walks through this land of giant trees, it seems to grow in darkness. Not the same darkness that chases the setting sun, but rather an unnerving and suffocating darkness has begun to fall all around him. Is it not just past noon, Stefen thinks, for the sudden arrival of this false night frightens him. Yes, I left just after the sun had risen, and so I should have several hours until night truly catches up to me. But as he walks further through the forest, the shadows around him grow even darker. Soon the light is so scarce beneath the trees that Stefen can make out less than an arm's length ahead of him. He turns around to face the direction from which he came, but all he sees far off in the distance is a meager light no larger than a faded star. This death of the light suddenly drives something into Stefen's mind, the location of the temple. This must be the Forest of Darkness. The temple should stand at the opposite end of the forest from here, he thinks, pulling out the map to double-check before continuing to walk on. Occasionally, a slender shaft of sunlight slips into the forest through the leaves above, yet these are but pale imitations of their golden counterparts. Soon, however, even this amount of light is nowhere in sight. The longer he wanders through the darkness, the more it seems to overtake him. Now the wickedness of the trees has begun to block the very wind from venturing into their forest, causing the air to feel stagnant and sickly. This uninterrupted darkness now presses in from all around, its endless black filling Stefen's eyes as the stale air chokes his throat. This complete lack of his senses soon overwhelms Stefen, causing him to fall to the ground in panic while thrashing his arms and legs for any sort of relief. He tries gasping for air, but only succeeds in driving the sickening darkness deeper into his body. I need to calm myself, he thinks. Yet the suffocating shadows surrounding him make it impossible for Stefen to focus enough and do so. I must do this, he says aloud. For my Lady of Winter, I will not die in this darkness. It is saying this that gives him a brilliant idea. Because Stefen's family had always been poor, they could not afford to be educated. Instead, they lived on the edge of the woods where they collected herbs. Once a fortnight, they would journey to the village where they traded the herbs in the market. Not notable herbs of healing or sorcery, which would require study to understand, but rather herbs used for seasoning or to cook with. When times came hard upon the family, however, they often would exploit Stefen by selling him to the temple of Katagidos, where he would labor hard for the priests and clergymen there. He worked at the Temple of Storms for only a few weeks at a time. Most of his long days were spent hauling large stones. These were later used by masons to restore any crumbling sections of the temple. Yet every so often, his duties would instead require him to assist the temple initiates in their daily rituals. The men wielded words, and Stefen felt their power, understanding them to be incantations, though he never learned to understand much of what they spoke. Even still, nearly all of the rituals would start the same way, with the initiates sacrificing to Katagidos, using a sacred flame before asking for his attention. Akouste tifonimo, they would begin. Se apokalo. Athanato theo. Katagidos arhonta, ton katai gidon. Their words would ring through the air and to the very heavens above. These words, not spoken in the tongue of men but in the speech of creation, have power great enough that when wielded properly can shape the realms themselves. One day Stefen had dared to ask one of the initiates what the words had meant. "Hear my voice," the initiate interpreted. "I call thee immortal god Katagidos, lord of storms." But sadly this was all that Stefen could learn before a priest had overheard them. "The breaking of our trust and sharing of the sacred teachings," as the priest had put it, caused Stefen and the initiate both to be whipped bloody for their mistakes. This was the last time the temple had paid for Stefen's labor, banning him from ever returning for his crime. After explaining all of this to his father, Stefen had received another beating from him for selfishly risking and losing the family's income, as he had said it. "I do not have a fire, nor do I know the prayer to bless the flames if I did," he thinks. "But I have a goddess, one more real and true than I ever witnessed within the walls of that accursed temple," he thinks before speaking the words, offering up his faith to Kimonis as a sacrifice. "Akos te tifoni mo," Stefen's voice begins weakly, and although the words are difficult to say aloud, they ring through the air like a great bell. "Kimonis, Kyria ton pago," he says before the words are choked from his throat. Yet at only these words, the air around him, although still and unmoving, has begun to grow chilled. This whisper of winter focuses Stefen's mind, allowing him to finally calm himself within the overwhelming darkness of this unnatural forest. He relaxes his arms, feeling the dead and dried grass beneath him. Realization strikes Stefen. He must have stumbled off the path during his fall. His heart pounds frantically as he digs through the grass, desperate to find his way back to the safety of the path. He brushes over a rough wooden stick like a thin cylinder almost a foot long. Running his fingertips over its carved surface, he feels small holes pierced into it along with designs that feel intricate on the sides. "It must have come out of my pocket when I fell," Stefen decides before placing the flute back in his pocket and safely with the map. His hands begin again to explore the ground beneath him, this time lucky enough to feel his way to the edge of the path. "But which way do I go?" he says, for the darkness has kept him from distinguishing the direction from which he came from to where he is headed. After a few moments, he picks a direction and simply goes forward from there. Stefen walks down the path, moving very slowly at first, for after the darkness had overcome him and robbed him of his senses, he feels he must be more cautious than ever if he is to survive the journey laid ahead of him. As he walks, Stefen's eyes adjust further to the light within the forest, allowing him enough sight to make out the shapes of the land surrounding him. He can see the trees as they tower around him. Their twisted branches bear fruit, and what few leaves he can spot are blackened and void of life. The great gnarled trunks grow covered in dark green ivy, which reaches the tops of the trees and has even begun to creep over and cover parts of the trail. The quiet of the forest seems now to be everlasting, with each step of Stefen's feet shooting a dull, echoing thud throughout the still air. Thud, thud, thud. His steps ring on loudly in the darkness when his eyes catch a sight he had not noticed before. Stefen spots something glinting of light just further on the trail, yet as he comes closer, nothing but darkness is found, so Stefen ignores them. As he continues walking, suddenly just out of the corner of his eye, Stefen spots a pair of two shiny eyes studying him from out of the shadow. Startled and quickly looking in their direction, he sees nothing but the ivy-covered trees all around him. "Am I so foolish?" he thinks to himself. "Truly I must be, to have been lured away by a trick of the light." But after all he has overcome thus far, Stefen quickly pushes the eyes from his mind and moves on down the path he has set. Yet only a few moments pass before he sees the eyes again. This time, however, they are no further than a few feet ahead of Stefen's own. Feeling as though he could reach out and touch them, Stefen stumbles backward afraid, but the eyes simply blink before vanishing. His hands shake with fear as he spins around, attempting to face all directions at once, but yet again, the eyes are nowhere in sight. Terror takes him, sending Stefen running down the path and into the darkness, causing him to trip over a twisted branch and fall to the ground.
"Where is it you are going, and from where do you come?"
A hiss-like voice dances around Stefen.
"How were you able to make your way to the secret space? Or is it possible you know not to where you have stumbled in the darkness?"
"I have come here by no mistake," Stefen says, his knees burning with a white-hot pain from his fall to the ground. "I have been sent by the goddess Kimonis to seek an audience with the priestess of the unseen arts at the temple of Mr. R.A.Cherne," he says, his words cracking slightly with fear.
"A foolish boy in life makes a youthful soul in death," the disembodied voice begins. "For one of mere flesh to request an audience with the high priestess of Mr. R.A.Cherne, This is a lethal labor, indeed, and more likely than not to be your last.
What cause do I have to feel fear in this place? Stefen says, for I've seen nothing in the darkness save your stalking eyes. A wicked laughter echoes all around him before again the voice speaks.
Have you truly not heard the tales of her kind? Do you possess no notion of what it is your goddess sends you to meet?
Speak plainly, creature, or be gone and cease this waste of time, Stefen says.
It is not my place to subvert the will of the divine. Had your precious goddess wanted you to know the countless stories of innocent children stolen silently from their beds, only to be found later in the forest with their bodies drained of blood. No, I will speak no more of these tales. Should you wish to know of the men and women sent to end these monsters, none to ever be found or seen again, it is not my place to tell you these stories, or what else befalls men foolish enough to seek out the mysterious arts.
The words begin to echo even louder as Stefen's heart pounds in fear. I have been touched by the divine and have the protection of the Lady Kimonis upon me. Great goddess of the winter winds, Stefen responds. It goes against my faith that my Lady of Frost would send me into such peril, as unarmed and unprotected as I am.
Faith, when of the naive, will not get you as far as others might deceive, the voice says. To have seen so little of the world, and to understand even less of it, that you truly believe the goddess cares about you. Foolish boy, it is in their nature to use, bend, break, and discard that which is lesser at their whim. It is not in the nature of the wind to care for man before she freezes him with winter's breath,
the voice says, shocking Stefen into a few moments of silence before he decides what to say. Answer me this, creature, Stefen says. Who are you, and of what authority do you possess, that I should take your words as truth rather than to discard them as lies? His question is met only by silence for several long and uncomfortable moments, until suddenly Stefen spots a vicious pair of eyes watching him from out of the darkness to his left.
For you to be capable of comprehending the answers to your question, you must first open and expand your mind. As of now, these notions are of much too high of an intelligence for you to understand,
the voice hisses, now coming only from where the eyes peer out at Stefen. Yet as he looks closer, they blink and vanish from sight.
A notion you may grasp, the voice continues again surrounding Stefen, is my role as the guardian of sacred spaces. He who protects their power. My task, given to me by the gods in ages past, is to watch over and defend, if necessary, the sacred spaces within the realms.
And what is it you protect here? Stefen asks. What is of such value that I cannot continue the path my lady has sent me on?
The land and forest, the mountains and sky, foolish mortal. But I assure you, no help is needed from me in the defense of this place from unwelcome visitors, the voice says.
Then be gone, creature, and let me pass. Should the priestess I come to meet deem me unworthy to be here, she may deal with me as she sees fit.
As you wish, the voice responds. But you must answer me this before you move on. What is it that you and your goddess require of this mysterious priestess?
Stefen pauses for a moment as he considers telling the truth or a lie. Yet in the end he decides Kimonis spoke nothing concerning him keeping silent about his journey, should he meet any other people along the path. I have been chosen by Kimonis to act as her companion, he answers hesitantly. I must prove my devotion to her by attempting and conquering the series of rituals she has laid before me.
I see, the voice hisses in understanding.
It is a gem that I seek, to be transformed into a great conduit of divine power. I must ask the priestess to call upon the mysterious god to aid me in this endeavor. I shall not say more to this. After these words, silence echoes eternally around him before the voice finally speaks again.
And do tell, mortal, what have you brought us as sacrifice for the great god of the mysterious arts?
The voice asks, and at these words, Stefen's stomach turns to ice. Has this truly happened? Has he come to the end of his journey only to have no sufficient sacrifice to give? As long as your heart and soul shine truly, the words of Kimonis ring through Stefen's ears, no offering you make will go unaccepted. It is only after contemplating these words that he feels confident enough to give his answer. I have nothing to my name, he begins. No lands or titles, nor do I carry with me a great treasure. The one thing I hold deep in my heart, that which I found when meeting my goddess of frost, is faith in the divine, and that I will one day prove my devotion to Kimonis. A cruel laughter fills the air before the voice responds.
Your faith, as true as it is, can only be truly devoted to one god at a time, and unless I misheard your words before, you have already pledged yours to Winter's Queen, Kimonis of the Winds. So unless you possess something of equal value to this faith you have, this is a wasted effort."
The words cut Stefen like a knife, yet at the same time point him toward hope. Something of equal value to my faith? He thinks. I have this, he says, pulling out the enchanted flute. It was given to me once I pledged to complete the rituals of devotion. It holds value near to that of my faith, he says confidently.
This would be an acceptable offering, but how do you hope to return home safely without using the flute as protection? After all, it is its power through the song which calls out to your goddess, summoning the freezing wind to aid you in your struggles,
the voice says. True, it is the flute's song that the goddess hears, Stefen responds, but it is my faith that I truly use to call her. The instrument only helps to focus and direct it. Should I find myself in need of her help again, I shall use prayer to call out and hope it is enough for her to hear. The voice seems quiet after Stefen's response, almost as though thinking of what to say.
You hold wisdom past that of your years, the voice finally says. In recognition of the devotion you've proved and the intellect you've displayed, I shall allow you forward and point you towards the direction of wisdom. On your return to Pogam Castrum, it would be prudent to seek the answer of these questions. Where is it your goddess has brought you, and for what reason, I wonder?
At these final words there comes an explosive sound like thunder as a thick smell of smoke fills the air. The darkness which has been surrounding Stefen for hours seems to lighten suddenly as the smoke spreads through it. Finally, when the smoke seems to fill everything in sight, it rushes back towards Stefen and vanishes, clearing the path of that unnatural darkness. Still surrounded by the same colossal plants and trees as before, Stefen walks further down the trail. Time passes slowly, and still he sees no animals as he walks on quietly. Moving forward in silence comes to be quite boring to him, so he takes out his flute and begins to play. Having no background in the musical arts would typically leave one hopeless at playing an instrument. When playing the flute, however, Stefen makes music as if born to do so. The notes look to ripple through the very air around him. Even the trees and flowers seem to dance and bend just slightly with the music. The enchanting notes of the flute ring through the air, penetrating to even the deepest parts of the forest. While walking and playing pleasant songs, Stefen hears something that causes his music to suddenly cease. The sound of swift rustling far off to his left, faintly at first but growing. It comes from the bushes which stand past the great trees, and like the rest of the flora, these bushes are much larger than Stefen in size. The rustling is coming closer and moving with a speed swifter than any animal Stefen has heard of before. Just as he thinks the creature is finally close enough and about to emerge into sight, the rustling stops. "Who moves in the trees hiding from sight? Show yourself," Stefen says, but there is no answer. "I shall just stay on the path and continue forward," he thinks. "For as long as I keep to the path, I shall find my way safely to the temple." But suddenly a terrible thought crosses his mind. He had fallen off of the path earlier when he collapsed in the darkness. Could that have broken the enchantment? He wonders. But I haven't time to worry of that, for it seems my songs have caught the attention of some unknown beast that lurks just out of sight. He takes a deep breath to calm himself before moving on and away from where the rustling had sounded from. After walking for a while, Stefen hears again the sound in the bushes, and again the creature stops before he can tell what it is. "If you are a creature of intelligence," Stefen says loudly, "then show yourself to me, and be done with these games." The rustling starts, but this time accompanied by the snapping and tearing of large logs and branches. The sound gets louder, moving closer to Stefen. Just when it could get no more terrifying, a great fierce bear emerges from the giant bushes. Fear takes hold of Stefen as he stumbles backward, tripping over a rock and falling off his feet. The terrible bear, no longer obstructed from view, seems now to be even larger than the bushes it had been hiding in. The beast stands on its two hind legs, letting out a roar so deep the trees themselves seem to quake and shudder. But Stefen scrambles to his feet and begins running down the path with all of his speed. Yet as the bear lands back on all four of its legs, the beast does so with such force that the earth shakes. The quaking trips up Stefen's feet, entangling them and causing him to fall face first onto the ground. After pushing himself up, he looks in the direction of the bear, but it is already upon him. The beast's hot breath warm on Stefen's face. Great paws larger than 2 feet wide, wielding claws sharp enough to cleave through trees, and Stefen has found himself encircled by all four of them. The beast uses its hind legs to tower even higher over Stefen, before unleashing a roar far more fierce than that which came before. Finally, the wicked creature slams its blade-like claws down towards him. just before they meet his skin. Thick silver ribbons of smoke fill the air where the bear had been, leaving Stefen's eyes stinging and blinded. When the pain subsides and Stefen wipes the tears away, the bear has vanished within the smoke, and as it twists and turns, he notices its darkened depths condensing into a smaller shape. After a few short moments, nearly all of it is poured into the form of a person, and suddenly it begins to speak. "You will find, stranger, that this path through the forest leads to one place alone," a horrible, strong, and overwhelming voice says to Stefen. "What makes you deserving enough to reach your destination? Such a feeble-bodied and weak-minded boy, to be granted an audience at the temple of Mr. Heractus?" It asks him. "I've been given this task by the goddess Kimonis, and so move with her blessing to present an offering at the temple steps." The color of the smoke begins to smooth and change. Soon, Stefen sits before the shape of a woman clad in silver. "And what do you seek from the goddess of mysterious arts?" the voice asks, now sounding more human than before. "I seek a gem from the earth, concealed too deep for the hands of men to reach," Stefen responds. "You have been warned, and wisely so," the woman begins. "To keep on this path for it is the only sure way of reaching the temple safely. Yet you play your song so sweet, calling out to all who can hear." Stefen feels his face grow warm with shame. Had he truly been so foolish to make a racket in such a quiet and ominous place? "It is true. I thought not when playing the music," Stefen says. "But before I began to, I heard no sounds within the forest, and so thought there would be no beast to disturb." Saying these words out loud causes him to feel even more foolish. After the warnings given to him by both Kimonis and the eyes, he feels now that he should have known better than to so obviously announce himself, especially in a wild place where the sound of his song was the only one to be heard. "If you speak truly, and you indeed plan to make an offering at the temple steps," the woman says, "then what do you bring to sacrifice to our Lord of Mystery?" As she finishes speaking, her form finally becomes completely solid. She stands clothed in the finest silk Stefen has seen, jet black and trimmed with silver, her hair flowing long behind her, glistening black as the night sky. The breeze around them causes her hair to move and dance like ribbons in the wind. The woman's face, however, is obstructed by a beautiful mask. It looks to be carved of some sort of black gemstone with silver clouds embedded within it. Yet at the same time, the material has a transparent smoke-like quality. Even with the mask obscuring her face, Stefen can tell she is one of, if not the most beautiful women he has ever seen. "I carry with me an enchanted flute," he says, removing it from his pocket and presenting it to the woman. "Used by the faithful to call to the gods, it was given to me by the goddess Kimonis before I had left on this journey. This flute has proved to be a priceless instrument in what I've had to face, my most valuable possession and what I intend to offer up at the Temple of Mysteries." The woman gently takes the flute into her hand, carefully examining its every inch. "May I?" she asks, preparing to play the instrument. The music she makes is like nothing Stefen has heard before. The notes are much deeper than that of his song, and he finds the depth of them to be far, far more beautiful than his music had been. As she plays the flute, even the shadows around them seem to draw closer, growing darker and longer as each moment passes. Just when they almost begin to choke out of all the light around them, she stops her song and the shadows recede to where they had come. "This is a great offering indeed," she says, handing the flute back to Stefen. "Now let me show you to my temple, where we will carry out the ritual to invoke Mr. Heractus, god of the unseen arts." Stefen feels shocked. Is this truly the woman he was sent to meet, or perhaps another trick being played, trying to lure him off of the path? "I was warned of treachery before leaving on this quest," Stefen says to the beautiful woman. "That I would face many obstacles trying to tempt me off of the path. How do I know I can trust you?" he asks, tucking the flute back into his pocket. "My name is Petra, and I am the eternal priestess of Mr. Heractus. If I wanted to drag you off this path, I could do it with the power of my voice. I can see into your mind and hear your very thoughts. In a blink, I could transform myself into smoke and shadow, vanishing so you would never find me or my temple again. Is this what you wish to happen, mortal?" "No, it is not," he says. "I'm sorry for my foolish words, priestess. To offend you was never my intention. After all I have seen in this forest, I was only trying to be cautious," Stefen says, bowing his head slightly. "I would be honored for you to lead the way," he adds, his eyes meeting hers through the smoky mask. "Then rise and follow me," Petra says. "I shall show you the Temple of Mysterious Arts." At these words, she extends her hand to Stefen, and after he takes it, She leads him swiftly through the path and towards the great temple of Mr. Heractus.